That's correct.
Politician's a bad word.
Yes, that's right, representatives.
It's a little greasy,
Well, it is, and they kind of deserve it. It's really appalling. Their behaviour is appalling. So our strategy, there you go. Our vision is to be a major new political force that forms government to unshackle Australia from dysfunctional politics, inspire its citizens, and allow the country to thrive. So it's our vision. Happy for any comments and questions. It's all quite fluid, so we can always take it back and change it if we get a good alternative. So our goal, does anyone know what BHAG is? Is that common? Oh, it's business, big, hairy, audacious goal. And that's actually comes from, I guess, business. You know, there's a well-known business textbook about the companies that have done exceptionally well over 100 years. And they use this the idea of setting a big, hairy, audacious goal, BHAG. So, for example, Kennedy, when he said that we're going to put a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth before without even knowing how they're going to do it, that's called BHAG. Yeah, so you can see some parallels, right, without us knowing really what we're going to do, how we're going to do this. So our first attempt to form government will be the next election, federal election, which they come every 3 years, but it's not set. So the Prime Minister can choose to have an election before that, so it's flexible. Likely to be late 2018 or early 2019, but for tactical reasons, he may go earlier. If he goes earlier, we won't be ready. If it goes earlier, we'll just use it as a learning experience.
I don't think he'll go.
Yeah, he's struggling in the polls at the moment. The guy, the governing party is well behind. So, okay. So our approach to policy. So as a prospective government, we've got to have credible policies, we think, in detail across the board. And I know Bill was saying earlier that we should be, perhaps not talking so much about policies, but talking about reframe, the frame first. I think we probably have to do both. So the policies will be underpinned by our principles and axioms. So we do have a set of principles which are really around what we think are rights for Australian citizens and residents. It's right to to feel safe, to have a job, to justice, to high quality education, high quality healthcare, to retire in dignity, die with dignity, and what's that? Get married. But the kicker is that we're saying, well, the government's responsible for affecting those rights. So, in other words, a more activist government. The axioms are really around some of the facts that we're basing our policies on, and obviously they include some major tenets of MMT, but also about climate change. So if everyone reads those policies and axioms, we'll get a pretty clear idea of where we stand. And also the policy development is actually with the members. The members can help contribute to the development of policies, and ultimately will vote on policies. And we all have to stand by that once it's done.
Members of the party.
Yeah. Key policies. So we've got a number of policies, but these are our big ones. Full employment, including a job guarantee, free high quality education, including childcare, free high quality healthcare, including dental, which is not included in our national scheme at the moment. Australia to be carbon neutral by 2030, it's a BHAG in its own right. And secure housing for all. So there are big ones.
Can you elaborate on high quality education? How long? How do you have a term? Is it for life? Is it for?
It's for life. We like the idea of adult education and re-educating people themselves. Especially in this environment where industry's changing all the time. You need reskilling. It's all about well-being, really. That if people need to change, we'll support them in doing that.
And then secure housing. Can you say what more that means?
Well, we've got a few ideas. We haven't gone into detail on that, but basically, one thing is we've got an affordability crisis, certainly on the east coast of Australia at the moment, where there are policies, tax sort of incentives for investors as opposed to
Bill talked about that.
yeah, and which is driving up prices, which is driving up. So we're going to kill that stuff, right? And so that's one angle. The other thing we're discussing is where people living below the poverty line and whatever will be able to buy their own house and will repay basically government loans. A certain percentage of their income, whatever their income is, might say 20 or 25% of their income they need to repay it, but they actually own the house. Because that sort of build up of wealth, can be intergenerational, and poverty is intergenerational. So we're trying to break that. So engaging with voters. So three main ways we're going to engage with voters. So clearly, social media has got to be a massive part of our strategy, but also local community campaigns run by party branches. So we will pick things that are issues that might be sensitive to the local, and if it fits with our values and our principles, then we'll support them and hopefully gain support that way. Also specific voter groups. So over here, this Centrelink is where welfare recipients will go, right? So we think they're a pretty obvious target for standing there handing out leaflets about a job guarantee and all that sort of stuff. There's quite a few people there that we think will get some support from. What we're not counting on is mainstream. These are American ones, but mainstream media, right? So we don't expect them to cover us in any big way to begin with, but once we get traction, we think they will, because I've spoken to a few people in mainstream media, and they said their biggest fear is missing out on a story or whatever. So at some stage, if we get enough traction through social media and on the ground activism, we think they'll cover us.
Is television in Australia commercial?
Yeah. Oh, there are state-owned channels.
All of them, or
No, and then there's
which ones are the big ones that are watched?
the commercial ones.
Commercial ones,
Yeah.
So they're always trying to raise their rates based on their ratings, their ad rates.
Yeah.
So the motivation is raise their viewership so they can raise their ad rates so they can bring in more money.
That's
So
right.
Anything that's sensational will bring in more people.
Yeah, so they're a bit torn, right? It's also owned by big corporations. They may worry about us, but nothing to worry about.
Not all. One of the stations, commercial stations, is not performing all that well, to describe.
Well, it's actually going to be bought by what is it, CBS? CBS is going to buy one of our bigger commercial stations. Okay, so how we work. So we have this concept called distributed leadership, right? And it's really untested at this stage. Bill's worried about this one because basically it means there's not going to be one leader who runs the show, right? So there may be symbolic leaders and spokesperson or people, but there's this term that's kind of been popularised in Australia called captain's calls, because that previous Prime Minister, he made some decisions almost without consulting his party, right? And they're funny, weird decisions, very odd decisions, but they call them a captain's call.
What was that, the dickhead?
That was him. Yeah.
That was Prince Philip, the Queen's husband. He recommended a knighthood for him. Bizarre.
It was quite bizarre. So there won't be any of those, right? So we'll see how this works. But the idea is there's no one president of the party. There might be multiple presidents of the party and stuff. So we'll see.
Do you have a framework for that, Ed?
Yeah. What do you mean framework?
Well, I'll talk to you about it maybe
Okay.
off later, but I have a few ideas on how
Oh, excellent.
we could do that for people to be present and powerful.
Excellent.
So these bits are
Team. Team building.
Yep.
But these sort of leaders, so to speak, they wouldn't just be able to say anything.
Correct. So the party itself is democratic, right?
Yeah.
So New Democracy Party is not just about the country, but it's also about the party itself,
Yeah.
right? It's very democratic, empowered, and all that. So this is kind of important. It's and we've already tested this in a few ways. Discussions will reflect our respect for each other by focusing on the argument and evidence, not the individuals. What's that?
That's no fun.
Well, We're called learning conversations in the literature, I believe, and that is no personal tax or controlling conversations. Well, you know, we've had mixed success with this, but that's one of the ways we want to redefine politics, right? So all these childish attacks, and when you get personal, we think we're losing the argument. So you know, we've got to test ourselves internally first, but even with the way we treat the opposition, we don't want to attack them. We should be able to attack their arguments on the merits and accept their arguments on merits. You know, so we're setting high bar here. I'll talk a little bit about that later when we talk about our experiences so far.
Is Australian politics kind of familiar with the stuff that Donald Trump is doing? I mean, everybody calls his name over there. This is kind of new for us.
Yeah. We were all utterly...
Sorry, what was the question? What was the question?
Donald Trump being as abusive as he is to other people, I mean, that's new to American politics. It's been relatively...
we haven't had anything that bad.
No.
Oh, okay.
It's
more like British politics. Where
Yes,
people are calling each other names in the House of- okay.
yes.
So, yeah, I've seen that.
It's childish, really. So informed democracy, I was talking about before, where key decisions will be decided by votes of members who can demonstrate an understanding of relevant issues. So,
How do you do that?
yeah, good one. So an example of that, you do. Yeah. But it'll be sort of what Rod, one of our guys calls from a formative basis. So for example, let's say we're discussing the politics whether they have the policy whether to have zero interest rates or not, right? We don't want anyone just going in and voting on that without understanding the issues, right? The variables. So they'd have to, before they'd voted, they'd either have to recuse themselves of the vote or say approve that they do it, which through a quiz and whatever.
So no
But
Borrow Bill Mitchell's that weekend.
it's quiz, yeah. What's your average score? And the but also we've got an approach we want to educate people. So we've got we're building an online learning tool. So we want everyone to, whatever the issues are, if they want to, they can learn about it. And so we'll educate people within the party. So if they fail the test the first time, they'll have another chance. And also in terms of who we think, you know, who we want as part of the party, as long as they accept our principles and axioms, they're good to go. We don't care who they've been voting for, what they do as a job, whatever. So just the organisation structure, we've got National Executive Council, and we're going to have branches, don't have them yet. And depends how big the electorate is. Eventually, they'll be divided up themselves. So those electorates are 150, and then within that they'll have maybe some smaller sub branches. We're actually trying to get to quite small teams, and then you've got functional teams that do the machinery of the party. But we've also got a policy focus over here, where we've got a policy council, and within that we've got policy project circles. So there's a policy project circle on employment. There'll be one on health, one on environment, and so on.
Would the party be writing legislation or just writing?
Not yet. So we'll get down to detailed policy first. And
is that how it works in Australia? I mean, would the party write their legislation and have their people running through the houses?
That is right, but you get assistance with that once you're in Parliament. So powered by the periphery, unified by the core is one of our expressions. A little bit, I don't know, what's the word? You've probably got a word for it, Michael, but
It's a good bumper sticker.
but it's we're trying to reflect the fact that we do want our branches and our local electorate branches and our local branches to be very important with this and provide feedback loops and all sorts of things. But they've kind of got to do it within a framework and within standards and using tools that we enable them with, right? Whether it's websites and so on. So we'll talk about our IT infrastructure. But the idea is these branches can set themselves up very quickly with a website, with forums, online things, and ways to engage with each other very quickly. Experiences so far. So we have spent a lot of thinking time on our conceptual design. We still have a way to go, still conceptual, so we know that it's all in beta, we'll be tweaking it as we go. We've developed the principles, the axioms, and the policy positions. We have about 30 policy positions, and that took a long time to develop. Like, you think you've got a pretty clear, firm position on something, and you get in a discussion with 5 others, and my God, you know, you learn something. You really do learn different perspectives, and it's a fascinating process. And we took a long time to get those, but we're pretty happy with the results. And those policy positions are just that, they're positions, right? So they'll be, if you go on our website, there might be 3, 5, 6 bullet points, clearly show our position, how we stand, what we stand for, but there's a lot more detail that needs to happen right below that. Built the main website, it needs work, right? So when you look at it, we need a designer, right? They cost money, but we'll need decent some design work. We do have some Facebook pages. We're attracting party builders. People can help us build a party. And we're just beginning to develop detailed policy. So we're a fair way down the track on our job guarantee policy. And we're continuing to build the IT infrastructure.
Before you go on that one, I know you mentioned before that you had talked to Bill, and Bill said, well, you should talk to these people. Maybe they're in a different party, but he didn't want you to be splitting the vote.
Oh no, that was, yes. So that was when I. Yeah.
So you said something about that. As you write your policies, are you seeing any familiarity with some of those tertiary, smaller parties? Are they all not as comprehensive as what you're putting together?
Well, there's only really one. So there's only one other party that's accepts MMT at the moment. And it's a small party like us, called the Australian Workers Party. So they're off down their path, and we're off down our path, and it's an interesting test for how we work with them, because we have decided to go down 2 different paths, but I'm fearful of the Life of Brian scenario where yeah, exactly, spooners and stuff, because and the left has done that, the progressives have done that throughout history, right, which is why the movie was made. And so we don't want to be like that. In fact, some of the language, even on a recent meeting, we're talking about, we don't want to give too much away. Well, hang on a sec. We're not in it. It's not a competition. If someone else, if they end up doing a better job, like, good luck to them. We'll go back to our day jobs. It's not about that. It's about change, not about whether it's us or anyone else. So, but there's only one other, right? So there's not much. So it's really, we're looking at the people we're meeting at this conference. So I'm making sure I know the people who are willing to take share some advice or look at our drafts of policies and give feedback. Got Phil nailed for a few. Well, he doesn't know it yet. But so, for example, Martin Watts, right? So tapped him, for job guarantee and stuff like that. Thanks, mate. So challenges so far. We have had some personality clashes, which are probably inevitable.
Humans though, right?
Well, exactly. But we're getting better at it, right? And to be honest, when we have these, it's a lesson, but we look at it through this lens of a systemic challenge, right? Because if we're having the challenge now, when the party gets bigger, so we're trying to build for scale, right? And something that's big. So we've got to work. Every time we have this, we kind of have a bit of a reflection on how it went, what went wrong, how are we going to do that in the future, right? And we are getting better at that. The other challenge is there's so much to do, it's not funny. And we're all part-timers, which is good and bad, right? It's good because we're not politicians, but it's bad because you just don't have a lot of time to dedicate to everyone's got day jobs. Which gives us a good healthy perspective, but in terms of just resources to do things, it's a challenge, and it becomes a real project management challenge. And I'm looking into some, agile techniques, project management techniques that are used in software development and whatever that I'm exposed to, and I think some of those we can borrow. So even a simple Kanban and down below there. And at the moment, funding, we don't have any access to funding at the moment, but hopefully that will change over time. And what would we do with the money? A few full-time staff would be good. So if some of the guys would, for not a big salary, would take it on full-time, happy to give up their job, and that would accelerate things, we think, significantly. Branding and imaging, design, websites, stuff like that. The technology infrastructure, things like video productions, we think that's going to be important. Even holding some events, and advertising. So just in terms of the personality clashes, it's kind of inevitable in one sense, but I think we can also manage it healthily in another. But because we're talking about pretty emotional stuff that's really held closely by people, and it's and a lot of passions. Yeah, so it doesn't mean you have to carry on like a pork chop, though. Oh, sorry.
Carry on like a pork chop.
I like it.
Yeah, so I'm only just showing this because this will just give you an idea of the sort of work we've got ahead of us, right, in terms of building the work, right. Not a lot of people would join a political party to get stuck into all the operational aspects, would they? They're usually passionate about policy areas. So there's a lot of work. So this here is now, it's a pretty new piece of these next few slides. Pretty new because we're attempting to try to solve that problem of a million things to do part-timers, right? Because we've been spinning wheels a bit lately, because we're trying to do too much, I think, and we're spread too thinly, and it's easy to be captured by the latest thing that's happening in the news, and you want to respond to it, and therefore we need a new policy position and whatever, and we just think progress is being slowed. So we're kind of trying to think, okay, well, what are we going to focus on? And we think, well, let's break it down into phases, right? So we're in this first phase, it's a build phase. And the next phase, which we're not at the moment, will be engage voters phase, and that'll be using two things, it'll be on the ground, boots on the ground, but also obviously social media will be massive. I know this Bill didn't rate the boots on the ground bit, but we think that's still maybe important. And then at some stage we'll get into a campaign, right, when the election's called or before. But we need to make sure everyone in the party understands we're in this phase, the build phase.
It's interesting to me because this is sort of backwards from the American system, which is probably backwards to start with. But the parties, this is what I've discovered from being a candidate, parties are just sort of background. They're private clubs. They're private clubs for people. But the candidates don't have to really have the allegiance to the party. And sometimes the parties will support a candidate that runs. I mean, for me to run in South Carolina, I pay $3,750, $3,750, and I'm on the ballot. And if I win the primary, I'm on the ballot in the general election. And that was it. And I didn't have to pledge allegiance to anybody. Now, if I had been a staunch party insider and decided to do this, maybe they would have fully supported me. It was sort of like in South Carolina, and it's probably different in other states. It was just sort of like tacit, like, okay, yeah, he's our guy. That's it.
So are you associated with the Democratic Party?
I was last year, so yeah. I mean, the Democratic Party, most of the people with the Democrats are my people, and we think a lot. So yeah, so Republicans are very conservative party.
Yeah, I mean, so this is arguable, right? And this might turn out to be the wrong way to go, but because we're not a known party, we've got to build something that we can sell to the voters.
But you're starting with the party idea. These are our ideas that we want to long around. You don't yet have a candidate that you're going to be pushing up. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about that in the next slide or two.
I think in America it usually starts the other way around. The candidates are someone who's, in most cases, is someone who has a huge fucking ego like this, and they just want to be a.
Sometimes the major parties, they'll quite often try and recruit them, bring them in.
Yeah,
And offer them a safe seat. So some of the seats that if you're on the ballot paper, you're going to get in.
Oh, right.
So, and they give to encourage those people to join the party and sit for that. So they might, they've never been a member of the party. You have to be a member of a party for a period of time?
No.
Tomorrow you could.
Yeah. Well, I've been advised here, since I've been, you've got to go and get a celebrity to front that to get attention. So that's one view, right? And it may be, and that's
it already has name recognition.
That was and that would still work. That would still fit. We could make that fit into our model. They wouldn't make captain's calls or whatever if it was Kate Blanchett or someone. But Russell Crowe, who knows? But so that's still a possibility, right? What's that? He is a kid. He's on the. I think he's on the Australian electorate. Oh, yes, he's renounced his citizenship.
He chucked out. He can't be a dual citizen, and they claim they didn't know.
Can't be a what?
Dual citizen.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can. So just a couple of things on what we consider party assets, right? And this is still going around within the party, but our detailed policies we think are an asset, right? And the machinery of the party, the way it runs, is sort of the operational capability, which is the systems and processes, and it is people, but we're also trying to build a thing that's independent of the people. You know what I mean? That's not, yeah. So it's not dependent on any one personality or.
Something that exists regardless of
who it is.
joins.
Yeah. So we're trying to create a sustainable party.
Infrastructure, institution.
I mean, this is all planned, right? So we'll see. Party building. So we think in phase one. So when we said building, what we really think that means. First of all, we've got to recruit more party builders, right? So we don't have enough now. We're all part timers. We've got to get more. So we're doing that with our Facebook pages. We are getting people coming in and asking about it. We're talking to our own friends, and we're finding that we think there are, I don't know, I'm categorising people now as pre-tipping point people and post-tipping point people. Do you know what I mean? Like people who are willing to come in now when there's, objectively not much chance of success, versus people who are going to come in when they're getting traction, right? We think we'll get a whole bunch. And a lot of people who we know we get.
Success brings in people.
Yeah, and we're sure of that. So, but the question is, how can we get people who are willing to put some effort in for an uncertain, reward? But also targeting specific activist groups. We just started doing that. So we had someone join our call from a refugee action group the other day. It was interesting. We've sent her our draft policy position. What's that? The banking group, who wants a Royal Commission into banking, and they want to change regulations of banks to be more. So, for example, that we engage with them. If they kind of align with us, we think A, they'll help us with some expertise, but B, their members may sign up, and help. And the party assets. Remember, so the policy positions. There are a few more policy positions that we just got to finalise, and they're the brief versions. And then we've got to get into the policy detail, which is starting with those five big ones first. Internal operating policies and procedures, the most boring part, but it's pretty critical, right? So when we have all these Barneys and these then we want to, and we have a vote. We came around and said, how do we all feel about that? Well, it wasn't that satisfactory. How would we do it in the future? Well,
What's a Barney?
a Barney is like a fight, punch up. It's not really a fight. It's just a rigorous discussion, robust discussion. Yeah, but the point is, it's a signal for how should we do it, and let's codify it some way. And technology infrastructure. So, just quickly on the policy development framework. So one of our assets. So we do have a framework, and this is what we're doing now with the job guarantee. So if we think about a policy document, we obviously got to define what we're covering, what we're not. We want a definition or a description of the current situation. So if it's unemployment, it'll be the facts, So you'll go to the Bureau of Statistics and get all the facts, because we want to make sure it's all based on true facts, not opinion. But also then, so what's wrong? What's the so what for this is the situation? Well, what's the problem? But in that, you'll also need to link to or be informed by research. So if it's unemployment, go, what's the problem with unemployment? Then you'd link to all the research about the health problems and the problems and a whole bunch of them, right? But the point is to make sure that make sure there's rigour in any policy we build. What are we trying to achieve? Policy objectives, policy description detail, the actual policy itself. The arguments, so what alternatives were considered, the pros and cons, implementation factors, and impacts, right, other than the objectives. So who are the winners and who are the losers, for unintended consequences, and so on. So we think that's a good discipline to make sure that we've got that, and then we've got another framework for how do we articulate that, and what we know what the counterattacks will be, and how our responses to their attacks and so on. This is our members page. So once you're a member, depending on, you have certain access to certain tools. So some people have access. So this is the contacts. So you can see who the members are, what the things. We've got an e-learning platform. Policy, we're still that framework we're putting online. We can a wiki, a forum, which we're very active in the forum where we're discussing stuff. We've got a document management system. This is going to be the website. So I'm in an electric called Graindler. So this will be we'll eventually have a website for my electric branch if I'm and so I'll have access to that from
What
you.
does that mean?
Granular assessment name, so I don't know what it means. It was named after a person. It was named after a person.
It's usually after an historic figure, sometimes an Aboriginal person.
So our electorates, we've got 150 electorates, are all weird names, right? So they're not names of the actual place, the district.
Oh, okay.
No one really knows what electorate is. They have to Google it every year, every 3 years. They figure out what electorate they're in. We've got a voting system, so we're going to do online voting, and everyone's got email.
Online voting for this, not for.
No, this is for for a policy decision or a key decision. So these are the tools we're developing. So this is just further down that page. These are our meeting rooms, online meeting rooms. I don't know, we always just use that one, but we can set up different meeting rooms for different reasons.
That's pretty cool.
This is a screenshot of part of the forum. So this is where we do have a policy development section in the forum. So this is where there's a whole bunch of discussions about whatever the policy is. So phase 2, which we're not at yet, but that'll be building the representatives, the candidates, right? So I might want to be the candidate for Grainler, but there'll be others. We've got to go through a process. We need a process for selecting the candidate, and then but also building up membership at all the levels.
What's the main target there? Which house? Upper or lower?
Well, a BHAG, we're going for the whole lot, right?
I know, but
Yeah, but think big. No, but
it's just
if it comes before we're ready, right? If we don't, it'll clearly be the upper house, right?
Yeah.
So secondary fallback position would be one of those minor parties that is part of the balance of power in that the upper house. But we think it's a bit binary, right? In the sense that we'll talk about it later.
Yeah. It's just that so the way the system is that there's individual electorates for the lower house. But if some journalist comes up or reporter and asks you a question, it might be related to the party in general, but it will generally be specific to that electorate. At the upper house level, the Senate, the whole state votes for senators. So you can tend to focus more on national issues, I think, and
Well, we could.
and of course you get a better chance of being elected.
No, that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. That's right. The way
Is the lower house then,
House of Representatives. It's been like
but they're concerned about national issues? Or
They
it's
are.
just like-
They all are.
Yeah, they all are.
but they're made up of local members who are supposed to represent their district.
So what state are you in?
I'm in New South Wales.
Yeah.
Michael's in Victoria.
So how many
I'm in South Australia.
representatives?
So-
New South Wales have the most because it's got the biggest population.
Yeah.
So Grainler is part of Sydney, right? It's about 10 suburbs in smaller suburbs in Sydney, but there's I don't know how many electorates in
South Australia's
New South
losing
Wales.
one.
Right.
They've all
So
lose one.
typically, how many
But it's only about 7 for the.
per state?
It's getting close to about 150,000 per electorate now. Isn't it about 150,000
People.
people per electorate?
I think I've got about 90,000. I've got about 90,000.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Well, maybe
Yeah, but so I would say there's shouldn't record this. I think it's about 30 in New South Wales, for example. It's the most populous state.
So how many representatives in the house, each of the houses?
So there's 150 in the lower house, so that's 150 electorates, and there's 76 in the upper house, and that's based on 6 per state, and 2 for we've got territories. We've got Northern Territory and the Australian Capital Territory. There's 2 each for those. 76. Okay, so phase 2, we're going to talk about the people, the representatives, and we're preparing means training them up so they know what they're talking about. Someone shoves a microphone in their face, and then of course convincing voters with a very impressive social media strategy. I mean, it has to be, right, with a lot of content, and running national and local campaigns and anything else we can think of between now and then to get voters on board. Phase 3 is, we haven't gone into detail about that election campaign. So MMT, right? 2 roles for us. Obviously sounds true, but how can you pay for it? So we need that. But the other one I contend is that it resets the political landscape somewhat, if there's that understanding. Which is, it's the only way we're going to get anywhere is that, right? In terms of resetting, this guy is an ex-prime minister, so he was very successful in the sense that he ran 10 budgets, fiscal surpluses in 11 years, right? So everyone thinks he was the successful politically, right? And so he's the doyen of sound financial management. But so the question for me is can existing parties transition to an MMT world? So can you imagine him going, having some of these quotes?
He said this?
No.
Oh.
But it's because I can't imagine these people saying that, right? So they've got it. They can't. So they're not going to hurt their legacies. So I think they'll fight to their grave that they were right. Or there's other views that they're politicians. They'll seamlessly and shamelessly transition to the new MMT world, and no one really hold them to account for what they've done before.
So after his term, things were not so good in Australia?
Well, put it this way, he finished in 2007.
Oh,
Yeah.
So but no one connects. Most of the population would connect his reign and the GFC in Australia, or the effective GFC.
Got out when the getting was good.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
Plus, it's a mining boom and all sorts of things.
the right-hand person of the Prime Minister is the Treasurer, and the Treasurer thought it was the best thing since sliced bread. He used to beat himself on the chest, saying a surplus. I'm a friend of the taxpayer, not recognising he was destroying taxpayers. Accumulated net savings. That's what you do.
So I debated whose head to put there, right? Whether it was John Howard's or Peter Costello, the Treasurer.
I wish you hadn't, because I cannot stand that one.
He's very smug, very smug man. And I think of him when I think of, would anyone admit that this other guy is very smug? But he, but the point being, if they fight it and lose, if they don't, then I think they're destroyed. I really think that the odds are reset. Now, so I think it's very binary. That's my hypothesis, and if that's the case, then we're in the game. Others, we don't know what's going to happen. But so it's all about. So Bill's right in a sense. Well, he's right all the time, but he's right in the sense to say that it's about the framing. But to us, we're not even in the debate if we don't have the policies as well.
Let me ask you this: if one of the major parties that's in power right now suddenly adopted MMT policies and did everything basically that you wanted to do, maybe not some of your other finer points and things like that, would you still be pursuing this?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be.
They're not likely to, because they want votes,
Yeah.
and they'll think we can't do this even if they believe in it, because we'll look like crackpots.
That's what I reckon. I reckon they'll protect their legacies as hard as they can.
So mostly then your goal is to get the word of MMT out there to help save your country, basically.
Yeah. And to me, I'm trying to think of a non-violent sort of metaphor. It's a stick of dynamite that you throw into the mix and it flattens the ground, and we're all starting from scratch again. To me, so all these 100-year-old political parties are no longer so powerful. We'll see. That's what.
If you come up with a new idea, it's like any new technology. Once the technology is introduced, some of the people who are operating off the old technology will go, we don't need that. What do you need software for? Right? And then it doesn't blow anything up. All of a sudden, it gets adopted one place or another place, and then all of a sudden, everybody else has to change their tactics. Otherwise, they can't compete. And so, implementing the technology of MMT is not any different than any other new technology. It is a new language. So I like when Bill says you can't use the old language because the old it's not. Don't be fearful to create new language because
I use it all the time.
Because otherwise, people bring what they know to the language, and then that makes it that much harder to communicate. If you bring brand new language, they go, well, I don't know what that language is, and there's curiosity there.
Curiosity.
Or there's, that's hairy-fairy, because they don't know the language, they just might write it off totally, but usually it creates curiosity if they don't know the language.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
See, I sometimes give MMT type presentations in front of lay people, and I sometimes, instead of using budget deficit, government, I'll say a private sector surplus. So the government's going to run a private, is going to allow you to run a surplus.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that's called a budget deficit. What do you mean? And then, yeah, they're curious. When the government runs a deficit, it means you run a surplus. I didn't realise.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a different term.
Start with the surplus
Yeah.
because that's the positive
Yeah.
thing.
Well, it's the other side of it's the other side of the same coin. Sometimes I'll ask. Sorry.
No, no, I'm just.
I'll say to people now, would you like the federal government to run a surplus? I say, yeah. Would you like the private sector to run a surplus? I say, yeah. I say, well, you can't have both. Would you prefer the federal government run a surplus, given that it's got as much money as it likes? Or would you rather run a surplus yourself or a deficit and you don't have the printing press? Or no, I'd rather run the surplus. Yeah, well, let them run the deficit, right? So you can run your surplus. And they're starting to get it. And it doesn't sound so bad, the deficit.
No. Yeah, and
I don't like using, then I would tell them I don't like using budget deficit. I like the term fiscal injection. Fiscal injection is what I call it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We're talking about because we had this framing session with Bill Mitchell here earlier, and I was thinking, and so yes, you were, and things like I was thinking, look, non-government or private sector is a bit technical, and I was thinking, well, what about a citizen surplus? I don't know, but
I think most people know what the private sector is.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, in Australia they do, you know.
Yeah, I was thinking non-government to be honest, so maybe private sector's better.
I was going private, public. I gotta think about it.
All right.
I gotta go.
Well,
No. Public, private. Public. Oh yeah, public. That's the government. But
Yeah.
it always, and I've been doing
No,
this
fair
for a long
enough, because
time.
we're part of the public. Yeah, I think if you're gonna substitute one for, it would be government for public, but maintain the private. I think most people understand what the
Right.
private sector is, but can confuse government with public. So you say government,
Okay.
fiscal injection.
Didn't like
Fiscal
my.
injection's better than deficit is because injection sounds
No,
like a good
injection's
thing.
great.
But
Injection's
You
great.
get a
fiscal
boost, you get a
injection,
boost.
they don't know what
Deficit
it is,
is
so
a-
they'll have to ask you, or just.
Oh.
Use positives.
I know. I was
No,
saying.
you know.
No, I was saying I think we need bigger fangs, right? Which is I was coming up with an acronym. What was it? Financial assets for the non-government sector, right? So
no, that's-
fangs is negative. Well, but you can remember it.
Yeah.
Okay, but the point is that no, but I just think that this is where the game is, right? Is if you win the argument. Now, I think we all know that, but that's what we're trying to build. We're trying to build a party that's got all this capability, that's ready to scale for when that comes. It's going to come, and so who's going to be there ready to when it does come to actually implement decent policies and are we going to trust it to a morphed, now your new best friend type existing parties?
Yeah. So, you know what would be an ideal thing for any new political party? We're talking about television stations in Australia. The main public broadcaster is the ABC Australian, and it gets pretty good ratings. But there's a program on Monday evenings called Q&A, question, and to get someone on that panel would be unbelievable, because then you could raise the issue and people, even though they could still be confused, people will want to know what you mean.
Yeah.
Nothing like having. I even emailed the ABC and said you need this man called Bill Mitchell on, but it's the ABC is a very conservative organisation, unfortunately.
Stephen Harper, Phil Law, any of those.
Where I think as a poor substitute, we're thinking of doing a video, picking up an existing Q&A, which is all online, and editing ourselves into it, putting someone on the panel.
That's good. That's
And,
good.
as shareable content
Yeah,
for
yeah,
social media, answering one of the questions from the audience.
Well, it would be good because they have point of reference to compare.
Yeah, and it's a bit amusing. Okay, so this is what I was hoping to sort of get some feedback on. You've been giving me feedback on everything, which is good. But some of these issues, communicating, the whole point is communicating MMT, spending capacity to the voters. Messaging, sometimes we in the party are getting caught up in whether we should be talking about MMT or messaging, say on our Facebook page, whether we should be, how much should we emphasise the MMT bit or the economics versus the actual, all the other policies, 29 other policies we've got, which are all progressive and all good stuff.
I would ask Warren Mosley about that, since he did run for Senate, and
And he is now, he's only for governor now, I think.
Is he?
Governor.
For Virgin Islands.
Yeah, right.
Oh, well, but he did that in,
Yeah, he did, he did,
in
yeah.
like in Ohio or something.
Yeah.
Congress.
Connecticut, I know, I sent
That's
him
right.
a little check. Well, I had, but, I would ask him a little bit, you know,
Yeah.
because he has some experience in being out there. What do you wanna put out there versus, I mean, he has the MMT in his back pocket, so I don't know if you put that up front, or do you put something that,
I think you do. I think you say.
Hang on, we're gonna get into that, hang on.
this-
Okay.
Given
There you go.
this, and which basically means, sorry,
That's
I
good,
shouldn't
that's
say,
all right. No.
but given that basically the federal government has no financial constraint, because I gave a presentation to the third, after the two major parties, the next one is the Greens. I gave a presentation to the Greens, the Sturt Greens, in March, and I went and checked the webpage and I looked at all their policies, and I basically started off by saying, your policies are fantastic, love them, but there's one here, and as a result of it, I can rule out about 90% of the others. And so you've got here fiscal sustainability. I said, because of that, you can rule out 90%. And then they got interested. Okay.
It depends on how you define sustainability in that case.
Well,
They meant
Yeah,
balance the
they meant
budget
balance the budget,
over
yeah,
the
that's
economic
it.
cycle.
But you can still use sustainability. Sustainability is gonna be.
Yeah, that's a different
spent as
term.
needed. So.
yeah, but I said, you know, if that's the way the Greens are going to operate, if you got into government, you might as well rule the line through 90% of your
Yeah.
policies,
Yeah.
because we go, oh, we can't afford that.
Mm.
Can't afford that. Can't afford that. But you would be able to afford it.
From my experience last year, especially, I talked to hundreds of people all over my district, and the question I asked them, because I went into this whole thing because I knew about MMT. So the first time I ran in 2014, that's really what I was pushing job guarantee and all this stuff. Get nothing. I mean, I did well for a write-in candidate. I did fantastic, 6% of the vote, but you know,
That's
it wasn't a whole lot.
You got 6% of the vote.
Yeah, the write-in.
Well,
yeah, but
So
if
why
you
did
got
it
that in
rise?
Australia, you'd be in the Senate.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
You would.
But last year though, I ran
State,
on the
yeah.
Democratic ticket,
Yeah.
but what I wanted to do really was bridge the gap, because I was a Bernie guy, so you know, I kind of wanted to do Bernie's message, but mostly because Bernie's message was along with my message. And when I went out there on the road, the question I finally settled on asking people was, what one or two things could the federal government do to make your life better? And what I found was that everybody answered one or two of the same five things, and they were healthcare, very concerned about healthcare, education, veterans benefits,
I can remember
90,000
veterans. Yeah,
veterans
yeah.
in my district, Social Security, and getting rid of the corruption in Washington, getting big money out of politics.
So
Those were the five things. And it didn't matter whether
Did you have a job? Wasn't employment? Wasn't?
Nobody brought up employment at all. It was very interesting, and it wasn't what I thought was going to happen. It really, I thought it was going to be slightly different things. I thought it was going to be jobs. I thought it was going to be higher wages or affordable housing or something like that. But it wasn't. It was those five things.
I
So
think.
consequently,
I
those
think I know
became
why.
five.
I think I know. Well, I might know why. I think those things are very important to people, but I think people want to make sure that there's a net to catch them.
Yes.
If they fall through the cracks, and that's what they're talking about. I want that net to be there. I do want higher wage. I do want a job, but if I become unemployed, I want something to catch me, and that's what people want.
My original messaging was around building not a social safety net that might have holes in it that people fall through, because that's exactly what happened to me in America. But it was a social safety platform below which you can't fall. And it included affordable housing. Basically, it was a bill of rights for everybody in that you'll never be homeless. You know, we're going to make sure you're going to at least have some place to live, and then kind of work up from there. But it wasn't really a concern for most people. So
Well, I'm sure
the big concern was those five things.
So I still think it would be a concern.
Well, I think it would.
But they don't want to be unemployed, but they want to know that if they become unemployed, there's this social welfare safety net to catch them. That's number one. That's almost like I was talking this morning about, that John Rawls' theory of justice, that Rawlsian principle. he talks about, when he talks about justice, he talks about a veil of ignorance. You've got to imagine that you're born into the world, you don't know where you're going to be, and the social status from...
You don't know
But
what
you
race.
think, okay, if I'm on the bottom, what do I want to make sure exists so my life is bearable at the bottom? And so you start from that.
Mm. So yeah, because I sort of, getting caught up in the whole technicalities of MMT and economics. I remember speaking with my hairdresser, which was a young lady of 22, and I said, when you're with your friends, do you ever discuss the government fiscal balance and all this? She goes, I don't even know what that is. She said, if you lower my taxes, I'll vote for you.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. I guess it's different cohorts or different voting groups.
I think you got to figure out who is your main audience. Who are the untapped voters that your message could appeal to, and find out.
You also think that there's one message, because in marketing they always, and even from watching politics, they say, it's the most annoying thing in our elections, because the election lasts 2 years, and they say the same thing over and over and over, and it's like, it's they go on 5 TV shows and say the exact same thing. Then they do 5 speeches, and they're the exact same thing, and it's just annoying, because somebody asks them a question, and they say the exact same thing. It has nothing to do with the question.
No, and that's their media training. They go in, they're trained to go into an interview, and they've got 3 objectives.
Right.
Doesn't matter what the question is, they've got to get those 3 objectives across.
Yeah, but
But I want to be different to that.
Yeah. No, well, and I don't know if they employ the same tactic here as they do in Australia. They'll have about 3 things. If they get a question and they think, they say, that's a hypothetical. I don't want to. It's a hypothetical.
I'm not going to run. I'm not going to run in comments.
And so, well, I was going to. If I was in, I'd say, well, I was going to ask you a question about this, but it's a hypothetical, right? So you know what the three. Yeah, it's a hypothetical. That would drive them.
I've never heard that.
Have you? Oh, they just say, oh, that's hypothetical. Hypothetical. Right? I'm not going to deal with hypotheticals.
Yeah.
Everything's a hypothetical.
Yeah, that's right. So we don't have a brilliant answer to that about where, because we still have this balance about what is the role of MMT for us. I talked about the 2 roles. It's a means to an end and all that sort of stuff. Should we be talking about it, or should we be talking about our policies? But I don't know. You've got to talk about both, haven't you?
it's a context, though. It's a context. I don't know.
Yeah.
You have the value proposition of your party, and that's an important context. So I think MMT can be part of that value context. And I think it's important to say the context, because that's what inspires people. That's what moves people. I had a dream. What Martin Luther King, he had a context that spoke to everybody. So I think the context is important. So can you put MMT inside your values in a context, and then you can talk about the individual concerns.
I think maybe it is that has been working for me. I think I told you the other day.
Oh, that's right.
When people will push back on.
Who's your name?
Getting people to trust me that I know what I'm doing, but it's like I'm addressing their initial needs or what they really want. But when they come back and they go, well, how are you going to pay for that? Well, then I go, well, you know what? Taxes and federal spending are completely separate issues, and we need to face that. We need to recognize that we can spend whatever we want, pay for the things that we need to pay for to make sure our society continues in the future, and we meet our societal goals. And taxes should be taking stagnant dollars out of the economy that are not helping our societal goals. That's what taxes should do. So when people are afraid that you're going to raise my taxes,
You want the private sector to be saving, though. It's important.
Oh, yeah.
It stabilises the financial system.
but it's stagnant dollars. Savings.
That doesn't matter, because the gap will be filled can be filled by the central government.
Right. Yeah.
And that's in fact its role, to fill the gap.
So in Australia right now, the private sector's geared to the eyeballs, right? So very, very.
Oh, we're the gold medalists.
Best debt. So we've got high levels of household debt. Gearing.
Oh, gear.
GEAR. Geared. We've got 3 Australians who can help you with that. Very high levels of debt.
Leverage,
Yeah.
by another word, yeah.
Very high levels of debt, right? So, and I think that creates all sorts of anxieties and stresses because even if you've got a good job, if you lose your job, you're kind of screwed. You've got this massive mortgage on
You're
this.
saying so the average citizen
Yeah.
has a high level.
Huge.
of
Huge.
debt.
And so we've got to over the if we were in power, we would work to get those debt levels, help them get their debt levels down.
Well, there's a simple way. The government runs a bigger deficit.
Yeah, no,
It's
we
the
will.
only way
We
you
will.
do it, is the government's gonna run
So in that sense, we want them to save. It's
Right.
paying off
Yes.
debt, but let's save. So this is the $64,000 question. One thing is we've got these ideas, the mandibles and the literature that Bill and Louisa are talking about is one of our people's a writer. She's a science fiction writer actually. She's a bit paranoid about the artificial intelligence and robots, but she's written some stories. Just take them away. See if you can think of.
Future visions.
Well, no, they're just stories about different characters. Very small little anecdotes, if you like, or vignettes. That they're in this situation, and as a result of the New Democracy Party being in power, it all turns out wonderfully. So we're kind of playing with that idea of how people might relate to that.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah.
And this was a proper workshop. I'd ask you to come up with what other sort of
I'll tell you how you can
roles.
get a lot of votes though. Stephen Howell and I were talking about this the other day. I think walking across North Terrace at the University of Adelaide. Basically, extinguish all HECS liabilities.
That's one of our policies.
Yeah, students
Forgive all debt.
have sort of like a student loan.
Same here, massive here.
Yeah, but it's not nearly as much in Australia. But if you could go your entire life never having to pay it, your income has to reach a certain level. But that's been brought down to some ridiculous level.
42,000.
Yes, but I would say if I was running for government, I'd say my promise is to extinguish all those. And you get a vote of every.
We've already got it.
Yeah,
We've already
good.
got it. Go on our
Good.
website.
Job guarantee. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. What are the goals of your society? Your goals of society are to make sure that people are educated.
Yeah.
So that's the easy one. So that's what federal spending should be used for, things like that.
But if you were the only one promising that, every young person would vote for it, I'm sure. Then I'd say pensions up to the. You got that one? Yeah. So you get all the everyone about age 70 onwards voting for it.
all the unemployed.
All the unemployed will vote for it.
3 million. 3 million living below the poverty line.
Yeah.
Unless once you can't.
That's what
vote.
you have to do.
It's not.
And then demonstrate that you can pay for it.
Yeah.
Alright.
And
It's not that hard.
You've got to be able to talk to them. You haven't just got to be able to talk to them.
Yes.
But the main thing isn't going to.
Yeah. How do we get to them? How do we get to them?
And goes
Yeah.
back to what we were talking about earlier.
You got to go on campus, I reckon, for this forgive student debt thing.
You said earlier you were going to go to that the welfare office or what was it?
Yeah, Centrelink, yeah.
When I was doing my campaign last summer, I stood in front of grocery stores. Now some grocery stores won't let you stand there for too long,
Right.
but I'm standing there for a while, and some of them let me stay there, like Walmart, for example. I never got kicked out of a Walmart parking lot. So I parked my rig, which was my sign and all that stuff, and I'm hanging out in front of Walmart for a couple hours and just talking to people coming in.
Do people come up to you, or do?
Yeah, it was really good. I mean, some places are better than others, but yeah.
I don't think Australians would come up to you.
yes, they would.
Would they?
They could.
So the other one, I think I've mentioned this to you before, but this is about communicating MMT. Is I think I might have mentioned to all of you about the threshold might not be that they don't have to understand everything. They just need to understand, or they could just they start to question the mainstream paradigm, right? And they start to see that the existing guys are starting to lose the argument. Even if they don't understand the technicalities and when they're arguing, they don't understand it, but they can see this guy's not winning the argument anymore.
I reckon it's not so much about creating doubt. I think people already have the doubts.
No, they don't.
They do. No, the doubt that. So about government being able to spend.
No, they have that doubt. What I'm saying is doubt. Sorry.
Yeah, well, that's
creating
what we
doubt
focus
about
on.
the current paradigm, right? So everyone's sure now that
That
taxes
does-
fund everything, right?
Yeah.
They're sure of that, right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, rather than our threshold have to be, they've all got to understand M&T,
Yeah.
they don't. They say the threshold's only halfway to that, and it's just that they kind of start to think, oh, maybe tax doesn't fund. You know, because I can see they're having these arguments. I don't understand the technicalities because they're talking about all these curves and stuff, but and reserve banking systems and things. I don't understand all that, but I can see our treasurer is not winning the argument. I don't know. That's what this marketing guy was talking about.
And that goes to the next line where, and that's, I think, you
Yeah.
told that to me, and I said, yeah, I think what I was trying to do last year was, especially when I was in debates with my cohort, it was complete opposite end. He's the debt fear guy, and you know, just that I was trying to say, he doesn't know. Do you trust him? I mean, he clearly doesn't know because he hasn't been helping any of us.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not an expert, but I know better than he does.
Yeah.
I mean, and we think, you and I, Mr. Voter, are working for the same things. This guy, who he's working for, I don't know.
And then we talk about the catchphrases and bumper stickers and whatever. The more that we can think of, the better.
Bit of an above. Can we afford it? Yes, we can.
That's on the card. I like that we are living below our means. That's a Bill one.
What's that one?
We are living below our means.
I think that confuses people. I don't think they really know.
Or just in Australia, they also talk about we're living above our
Yeah.
means. So we're actually living below our means. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't like. I'll tell you what. That's got nothing to do with it, of course. I love the men.
It's been recorded.
Yeah, it means there's the financial, which you don't have to worry about, and then there's and in fact, we are in fact living.
Oh, we
living
are.
our means in a biophysical sense, so-
yeah, good point.
Yeah, so I've been writing down some of the bumper sticker ideas. Somebody said, trust good math. I don't know,
Yeah,
it'd be like,
or trust your math.
Yeah.
We would say maths in Australia, but you
yeah,
say maths.
yeah.
We've got
You do the math. Don't you say you do the math? Often.
Young Australians are saying that now. The math.
You do the math.
That's math. No, nothing anti-American. I love America. It's math.
You do
It's
the
not
math.
math.
I mean, I use that one in terms of the unemployment, right? You know, you put the unemployment figure versus the job vacancy figure and go, you know, you do the math.
Yeah.
Anyway, so these are the voter stories that you've got copies of. I don't know who else. We should try to think of some other characters. But also, one of the questions here I've got is none of those actually mention MMT, right? I think I can't remember now whether Miriam had it. No, I know you're not supposed to read it, but so should we have to weed in that we can afford it into the
Yeah.
stories?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so I'm not sure we can do that. Talk about that. The other one for you, Phil. How do we leverage MMT experts like the academics and so on? You know, Steve
Well, I'm
Grumbo.
happy to do any public presentation in Adelaide, anytime.
In Adelaide.
Yeah, in Adelaide.
How many votes are there for us in Adelaide?
Where is
Hey,
it?
so that's where you're going to.
Oh, yeah.
When new parties start, what state is the one that they get into the Senate? It's South Australia.
Oh, okay.
It's the Australian Democrats. It was the Greens. It was
Maybe
the
not.
Big Xenophobes.
Is that right? The Greens?
Yes. Well, yeah,
Okay.
Greens in the state level, and then.
But how do you see this working, right? So you know, we're trying to educate ourselves as much as possible at MMT, but we're not economists, right? So let's say Dimitri or someone, or I'm out there on the hustings, or we're in a TV debate or radio, and you get this really curly technical question because they thrown an economist at you or whatever, which we're not qualified to answer. I guess we're going to say that we can't answer that, whatever. But you know, at some stage we need some backup and air cover. I just can't figure out how. That's what Steve Grumbine called it, air cover. I'm not sure how that's going to work. You know, we've got all these experts, but how we actually leverage
say
it.
we've got advisors. You know, got advising us on these matters, or something. Is that right, maybe? Give this bloke a call. Give me a call and I'll explain it. So.
We'll get your people to talk to my people.
Hey?
Get your people to talk to our people.
I didn't watch the talk last night, but Jan
Kringle.
Yeah, I did see that. That was exhausting.
I mean, his CV was like, you know, it was 15 minutes and talking about all the stuff. I mean, all you have to do is say.
It took 15
this
minutes for the guy to read out.
Yeah, I mean, because people are impressed with, you know, the credentials, and
Yeah,
they
but
say this guy.
Then they'll bring out
That's
Krugman
the
and
noise,
say
yeah.
he's got just as long a CV and he's a Nobel Prize winner and whatever.
Yeah.
So that's rubbish.
Robert Lucas Jr.'s got an amazing CV as well, but he talks absolute garbage.
I know, but it impresses people, you know, it impresses
it does.
the average citizen.
So that's what you're up against.
Yeah.
So that's a question for us: is how that might work, and maybe obviously we don't have the answer now. But at some stage, it's going to get nasty. We think if we get traction, it'll get nastier and nastier in terms of our attacks on us.
See, I don't mind being attacked, so to speak. Yeah, verbally.
If I get into Congress next year, you can use me and what I say as air cover.
Excellent.
And if you get into Congress in Australia, I can use you.
I hope it's not so horrific that we back it out. That'll be excellent. When is the vote? November?
Next November, 2018.
It could be at the same time as that. Last one is, this is the last slide, international dimension. So, I don't know, do you know of any other MMT based parties, movements, candidates?
Nothing in prison.
No, I don't know.
So,
I'm not aware of any.
so what is, if I can ask Steve Grumbine,
Probably.
what's he's a movement, right?
Yeah.
He's
The real progressives.
online, video blogger kind of thing. So yeah, but he's I guess a movement. You're yeah.
So you're the only other political
You talked to
Animal.
Stephanie Kelton is kind of keeping a list of people that are
Is she?
politically oriented because she was advising Bernie.
Yeah.
So she's keeping.
So they're likely to be individual candidates within the party, Democratic Party, probably.
Yeah. But there may well be some Republicans too, but outside of the U.S., I don't know. I would expect there's some Canadians that are onto this thing. I don't know anything about Mexico, but I'm sure there are. Italians. No, Italians are all over this. Talk to Will
Bill.
Warren about that.
Bill.
He says, and Pavlina, for example. I mean, they both spent a lot of time in Italy. And it seems to be MMT is getting big over there and getting into politics over there too.
Good.
So also with the central banker from Hamburg.
Oh yeah, that's right. The central
No,
banker
he's
from
a
Hamburg.
hero,
And he has sent some of he's a senior central banker. I mean, he said, I've been doing this for a long time. And some of my young people went over to the Levy Institute to get educated.
Oh really?
So, but that's not a political, I mean, he's.
No, it's
yeah, but
important.
it is.
Yeah.
It's an important role, but I just.
Does he get
I
it?
would just
Does he get it?
Huh?
This guy, did he get it? Get MT?
Oh,
Get
yeah.
MT?
He came to this, he goes, because I can't go to school. He says, I couldn't go to Living Institute to study because I've got too much stuff to do. But I could come to a weekend to meet everybody.
Good. All right. So that's that. So thanks for sharing, for listening, and
Sure.
feeding back.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. And you too.
So, yeah.
You too.
Yeah, let's stay in touch.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Indeed.
The important thing is
Oh, hang on,
for people to be talking about MMT related stuff in the major media. That's where you want it.
Hang on a sec. You just completely kiboshed our strategy. Because we're going to go social media first, right?
Oh, no, that's fine.
Oh yeah, but then it'll get there. It'll get
Yeah,
there.
you'll get there, yeah.
Groundswell.
No, what
Young people.
You want one day
Yeah, yeah.
to beat this.
Do you call
yeah,
it
beat-
the MMT party? It's Tea Party, that's not good.
We have discussed that, but we didn't get a lot of. Well, that was part of that balance about what do we stand for. Is
Fiscal balance
MMT is just a means to an end, not the end. But that's that balance. I agree. How much do we emphasise MMT? All right. Thanks everyone.